morning,
Good
good
morning.
afternoon, and good evening.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to our podcast. So,
So,
go
hmm,
for it. What are we talking about today?
today we are going over what's been happening, and one of the topics I hear you're very excited to talk about.
Yes. After seeing the RP1 video and listening to their presentation, it's one of the main concerns that I've had with Earth 2 is
Hmm,
the fact that they would be able to scale up to handle the amount of people and data that they would be required. Um,
hmm,
so um, you talk about bandwidth of servers and whatnot. That talks about how many people a server can handle, as well as how much data it handles.
yeah,
Okay,
hmm,
and start when you start talking about creating a ecogen um, uh, simulator that represents the entire world, and
hmm,
then you have hundreds of thousands of users on that. That is a tremendous amount of data, and
hmm.
so um, you know the equipment that would be needed to do that would be phenomenal. Um,
Yeah. So what they're talking about, in one of the articles that they posted about RP1 and what they're doing, is that they're talking about having a few servers versus an entire data center to host these sorts of capabilities when it comes to scalability in the metaverse.
well, they're still going to have a data center. It's just that
Mm,
instead of it reduces the requirement of servers. Okay.
mm, mm,
So because according to their presentation, well, not they've increased it by 1,000%. Okay.
mm, mm.
And which allows you to take and reduce the amount of equipment you need for handling that data,
Yeah.
and therefore requires the size, reduces the size of the data center. It
Mm,
also eliminates a lot of problems as far as the equipment. Okay, because the
yeah.
more equipment you add in, the more complicated the system gets,
Mhm,
the more chance of problems occurring. and
mm,
and
yeah.
so yeah, that's like like I said, that's been one of my concerns. But with the
Mm,
advent of
yeah.
this, go ahead.
Yeah, you think about Sandbox, for example, and their instances where it is, and this is how they talk about it in the RP1 presentation. It is a skybox, it's walled, and all this sort of stuff. But we'll just
Yes.
backpedal to how this kind of came into the conversation for the people who aren't keeping an eye on Discord and social media, Twitter, etc. So I picked up on a tweet from Paul Archer. So props to Paul Archer. He used to be quite active when Earth 2 first started and well renowned for his memes. So great guy. And he shared the presentation that they did at the or it's
AW.
augmented something or other.
Yeah.
It was a basically like a what do they call them? Um,
What you're
you
talking
know
about?
what I
Conference?
mean?
The conference?
Yeah, conference. Yes, yes. So he shared that, and then I reshared it, and then that kind of got a lot of people um talking about it and looking into what they're doing. Now, the thing that has pinged people's interest is that they don't have a huge following, and yet the CEO has won an award for uh, for being innovator in this space.
Right. Yes.
And as well, Sean Mann, who is the CEO, who was the person who did the presentation,
Yes.
he actually was one of the speakers at the Tech Circus conference that Shane was at. Well, he
Right.
wasn't at, but he presented um, via video chat.
Sure.
So the fact that, for example, their YouTube, when I found it, which was when I saw the tweet from Paul Archer, it only had 4 subscribers.
Right.
Okay. So I poked and prodded a little bit more as well.
Okay.
And so Shane had actually mentioned in the later half of January last year that his team had met up with RP1 to discuss what they could do from a partnership perspective, and they were waiting on an update from RP1.
Right.
So they've obviously looked at this solution that RP1 has got when it comes to scalability. So they're claiming that they're able to have 100,000 concurrent users in a seamless environment. So that's the kind of thing that Earth 2 is looking at.
Sure.
And then so these are all the things that are kind of tying it to Earth 2 is that Shane mentioned it on Discord.
Okay.
And then Enter the Metaverse, they were in that conference. And then now speaking to the moderator and admin manager of their Discord, he's now saying that they're now pushing for exposure, like they're ready for people to come to them. And it's not players like you and I
No,
or
it's
investors,
developers. It's
developers.
Correct.
That's right. So obviously they're not going to get a huge amount of following because it's not something that, is content worthy for the average consumer when it comes to things that go viral and whatnot. So that's kind of the backstory about what we're talking about, is that they're claiming that they can provide the infrastructure, the technology, the layering required to be able to scale metaverse projects in this fully immersive, seamless environment with hundreds of thousands, if not millions or billions of users at once.
Correct.
So a little bit of speculation in the community as well. Some people are saying that they're going to build their own metaverse, which I don't think is true based off their presentation.
No, I think they are going to provide the platform and or the coding necessary for allowing the other metaverse platforms such as those to take and build off of. Like I said, however, I've done a little bit of reading on them and stuff like this, and of course been in their Discord channel as well, and they're not, at the present time they're not revealing a whole lot, although they did say most of their work is open source, and so therefore it will be viewable at some point in time. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what it is they've done to be able to pump servers up the way they have.
That's right.
Like I said, that's always been one of my main concerns with Earth 2 is the sheer volume that of data and stuff and the number of users that they have to deal with, that how scalable and the equipment necessary, it would be phenomenal. And so
that's right.
Okay, but
the thing that he mentioned too was that in that presentation they were talking about how the data required, it would have to be set in order for it to be scalable.
Right.
Does that make sense? So they're saying that in order to be scalable in that way, they would go, okay, well, this has to be a certain size when it comes to the amount of data that is required and things like that. I'm not completely fluent in development, but yeah, that's what it sounded like. And also they're talking about accessing it via a web browser as well.
He did mention web browser, and I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to do a little more, reading and see where they go with that, because I don't know that the web browser will necessarily be I mean, Web3, the way I understand the development of Web3 is the browsers are actually going to be stepping back. I don't, anyway, but as far as the data set goes, he's talking about like for example, they have to have the ecosystem engine set up, okay,
Mm.
and fixed, okay,
Mm.
for the and the data sets set, okay,
Yeah. Mm.
and I think the Earth 2 has pretty much done that already.
Yeah, that's right.
The the issue is being able to have the users access the data set, and that's where RP1 I think is coming in, because they've however they have done it, they've increased the bandwidth of servers, and
Mm.
which allows access allows more people to access it, and more data to
Mm.
be handled by the individuals. So
Yeah. Yeah. When I think about what you're saying, you don't think it would be a web browser. And the way that they're talking is that they would have their own application as such, or something or other, to be able to, and similar to like spatial, for example,
right,
when you access that through a web browser.
right,
Um, I mean, I don't have I've accessed spatial on my computer, for example, and it's not seamless.
right. No, no, it's not.
So the way that they're talking versus what I'm experiencing, I'm going, well,
Okay.
spatial is in a web browser.
Well, let's compare. Okay. So when we access Smashcard, okay,
Mm.
Smashcard has its own app. It's not within the web browser. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And whereas spatial is within the web browser. And
I access Smashcart through the web
oh,
browser, though.
actually, I take that back. Not, I'm wrong. I am
You might
wrong
be
in
thinking of
Smash.
something else.
Yeah, I'm wrong with Smashcard. Okay.
Yeah. Mm.
Sandbox. Okay.
Yes. Good example.
Okay, Sandbox, you download the application to
Mm.
access Sandbox. You don't access Sandbox through the browser. Okay.
Mm.
And that's where I've understood that the web is going, is
Mm.
the browsers are not going to go away, but they
Mm.
will have a different purpose. See, right
Mm.
now, everybody's accessed the web and accessed storefronts and so on and so forth through the browsers.
Mm.
And so it's a choke point kind of. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
All
Mm.
right. But what I see is you will get into an application such as Earth 2,
Yeah.
or maybe even Sandbox down the road. Maybe Sandbox will expand to and get it to where they're not, a shoebox,
Mm.
because that's
Yeah.
basically what they are. You can only get like 15, 16 users at a time within a world or something like that. And
Yeah. Sandbox, it's about 50 max from my
50, I mean,
experience.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And
um,
even then, it's not a great experience. Sometimes you get a bit of lag and whatnot.
right. Right. And that's where the server bandwidth comes in, and players being
Mm.
able to access. Okay. That lag that you're talking about is because the
Yeah.
server is overloaded. I would say, let's say
Mm.
it's got the max in there. It's got 50 people in there. And so it's
Mm.
it's it's maxed out on being able to process the data for each individual server or each individual user. And so that's where the server bandwidth comes in. Okay.
Mm.
Anyway, uh, I got off. I lost track here for a moment. I got
That's all
I
right.
got into it, but it's going to be interesting to see how this progresses.
Mm. Yeah.
Because if their technology or programming is expanded the bandwidth of servers as much as they have said, that's going to make a big change in the way a lot of metaverse projects are going to be developed and stuff, because it opens the door for more scalability, and of course they said less cost. Okay, you know, when you're talking about laying out, several $100,000 to set up a server, and data set, and then you have to do that, multiple times to be able to handle. Well, and you can take and turn around and take 1,000 servers and put them onto one. Wow, that changes the price tag a lot. So,
and that's what we're starting to see here with technology, is that everything is starting to become optimized, more efficient with the use of technology. So this really is the fourth industrial revolution,
right?
In a a digital sense. The one thing that really attracted me to look into this more was their presentation spoke in very similar tones to how Shane has spoken about Earth 2 when it comes to being a platform. So we've spoken about this before.
Right.
And also this interoperability, which is what they're talking about, and being able to seamlessly go from Earth 2 or E2v1 could be a perfect example. And then into the portal. So in their presentation, they were talking about reducing the need to download applications, reducing the need to, have these loading times or downloading massive data sets. And it should just be like when you're watching YouTube or Netflix, you just get to where, and this might be, something to do with connectivity as well. So the amount of data that we can download and upload as well. But that's what they're talking about, is building the infrastructure to a point where it's just from one point to the next without having to sit and wait to download a program, for example. Which would be fantastic. I mean, I don't download too many programs myself. A lot of what I do is on mobile, so that doesn't affect me, but I know how frustrating it can be. Even just uploading one of these YouTube videos, for example, that's just intense. Sometimes you like waiting a couple of hours.
Yes. Well, that depends upon the speed of your equipment. So, as well as your connectivity to the internet. So, anyway, so it will be interesting to see how this develops, and I'm, like I said, I'm pretty excited about that, because, like I said, it opens the door and eliminates one problem I thought or E2 would have, but one problem period to the metaverse. So
that's right. I don't think as many companies are openly talking about it, because it's not an easy thing to do. And Shane's really taken on quite a big task of this one-to-one digital replication, and then transferring that from web to then application and having them talk together is definitely underrated. I think people underestimate that quite a lot. The other thing too is that our community, Earth 2ians or whatever you want to call us, we're very good at keeping an eye on things and trying to get the first foot into the door of finding out what's going on. So perfect example of that would be Polygon Studios. Everyone's got eyes on them. Now RGA as well, who are developing the social media app. We only just found out a couple of months ago that Shane mentioned that's what they're focusing on. And now we've got this, we've Ready Player Me is another example. And now RP1 is another example. So we're definitely keeping an eye on things. And we're always at the front of that, so which is good.
Yes, it is. It's very good. So you were talking, we're going to move on into talking about Blackrock, and
Blackrock,
So
Yeah.
I'm not very keen on seeing any of the large institutions start trying to control crypto pricing and everything else, and that's basically what they're doing with the ETFs. So you understand what an ETF is, an exchange trade fund?
No.
Okay, so do you know what a mutual fund is? Okay,
No.
a mutual fund is like where you have a company and
Sure.
it buys blocks of stocks and different shares of companies and everything else
Mm.
for a group of people. So they get this group of people together, okay,
Mm.
and the people put their money into this fund, and
Sure.
then they use that money to buy stocks and other assets and whatnot in order
Mm.
to try and generate income for the mutual fund.
Sure.
Um, so so then what you have is you have a large company, you have this group, and so they actually control all your assets. They
Mm.
control how much money how much money you may make or lose. I mean, there's
Sure.
been a lot of mutual funds that have lost a lot of money for a lot of people.
Mm.
And so when you start talking about these large institutions such as BlackRock, BlackRock is like one of the biggest in the world.
Mm.
And when you talk about them creating an ETF out of crypto, that gives them a
Mm.
tremendous amount of power on
Mm.
manipulating the prices. So
Sure.
instead of individuals holding their own crypto and
Mm.
managing how they spend it and everything else, then they end up controlling it all. Um,
Sure.
and and one of the arguments that is like with XRP and the case against XRP, it's saying it's not a stock, it's a currency. Okay,
Mm.
that's it's a decentralized currency, and therefore they're because it's open source, because you can take and see, you can go on to any contract and see the transactions happening within Bitcoin, within Ethereum. There's no
Mm.
hiding. There's no hiding that. But when you take and start saying, okay, well, we're going to have this group control all your cryptocurrency. Okay.
Mm.
It's kind of like
Yeah.
what with FTX, when FTX was doing, the kind of doing that. Okay. But
Mm.
in reality, they mismanaged their funds and therefore did not have the assets necessary to take to fulfill their contracts and stuff.
Mm.
And so, yeah, when it's like I'm I,
I,
I'm at a loss what to say, but it's
I think probably just a good example would be, so Bitcoin market cap at the moment, is nearly $500 billion. And then you look at a company like BlackRock, which has trillions of dollars worth of assets under their control.
sure,
So when you're talking about funds and stocks and things like that, who's not to say that they can manipulate the Bitcoin market to a degree where they buy and sell Bitcoin however they like, which
right,
in large volumes would obviously have a huge impact, and they would
sure,
be able to manipulate that however they like.
sure. And they can do that, and they actually do that to some degree or another. But
Sure.
okay, um,
Mm.
but
I think the
when
speculation
yeah,
with that is that they're filing the ETF, and the premise is that previously there have been companies that have tried to do this with the SEC and they've been knocked back.
correct,
So there's some sort of, and look, I'm not an expert with crypto, and we say this every time, but just something to consider when it comes to decentralization and things that are related to Earth 2 is that there are companies out there that are keeping an eye on things when it comes to cryptocurrencies and the metaverse and all this sort of stuff. And they will always be looking at how they can maximize their profits. They'll see the opportunity and they will try and take it wherever they can.
Yeah, but the thing of it is the key point here is when you take and allow companies like BlackRock and stuff like this to make up the ETFs, then it reduces the decentralization.
Absolutely.
Okay. And the idea behind cryptocurrency and stuff like that is to maintain decentralization, not giving banks or countries or individuals complete control, because then they can hide what they're doing. I mean, that's the biggest problem with the fiat currencies, is they don't necessarily tell you everything that's being done with the money.
Yeah.
and then they keep on printing more.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm not an economist, and
no, me neither.
I'm just
you just read
my
the news
understanding,
as it is.
yeah. And my understanding of it may be completely flawed, So,
yeah. I like to put it in layman's terms. So then,
right.
It kind of gives you a little bit of insight for people who don't know anything about it.
Right.
Who are, and I mean, when I first got into Earth 2,
right,
never touch an NFT, never touch crypto,
right,
didn't even know what it all was. It was the Inception video that pulled me in, which pulled a lot of people in. And then you go to the website, and our first instinct is that we see that price ticker on the top, and we go, this could actually be really promising. That's the thing that sucked a lot of people in. And then the reality of the situation is that there's so much in development, and they're not trying to get new users to get those prices,
no,
where
I
it
think
first started.
right now they're just
Which is
working
fine.
on developing.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah,
working on
exactly.
developing it, and yes, they need it. I think the reason why Shane and company launched when they did, and launched it as a web browser to begin with, is because it allowed them two things. One, it allowed them to generate some capital so they could take and work on building the project.
Sure.
But two, it also gave them a real-time database to take and work on the main platform. It's pretty difficult to take and build something like Earth 2 or any kind of database or data set when you have no data. Okay. Sure. And so if you have your data set, well, then it's much easier to take and build and manipulate and see how things work. And I think that's why Earth 2 launched when it did. And unfortunately, I don't know that there was a lot of people fully understood what was happening. I don't know that.
No, that's right.
And I think the early video logs and early news and stuff like this, I don't think was really clear in what they were wanting to do. And so that's where you had some of the confusion and disillusion with people. So
there's a couple of things that really stand out to me
Mm-hmm.
that were really smart decisions. Earth 2 to launch in the middle of the COVID pandemic, and basically the start of that.
Right.
Because a lot of, as much as some people may have had some issues with work where they weren't able to work and things like that, but a lot of people were stuck inside and couldn't do anything socially, things to basically, entertain themselves. So Earth 2, pops up and people go, you know what, I've got some spare time. I'll look into this,
Right.
Very smart. The second thing is that they're not trying to bring in new users. And I've kind of taken this approach myself. And, as much as you tell me to be patient and things like that, I I sometimes really can't sit still and really just want to keep pushing and doing some fun, interesting things that I think a lot of people will appreciate. And there is some parts to it where you can rely on timing. So Shane has done that with the launch of Earth 2.
Right.
And then he's also the way that they time these big updates the last couple of years has
Right.
been around that Christmas time where people are taking time off
Right.
and it's not summer, so people aren't on summer holidays and things like
Sure.
that, which is traditionally what would happen
Right.
where
Yeah.
you guys are. Maybe not so much where we are because Christmas
Yeah.
time is summer in Australia.
Right.
And so the Essence launch, I mean, a lot of people are getting quite frustrated that it hasn't happened yet, but
I
it
don't.
doesn't it doesn't need to happen. The thing for me, right, and I've said this before, I want Essence launch only because I want a value on Essence to be able to determine how my upgrading is going to work.
Sure.
But if Essence is going to come out at 1 cent,
Right. So
it's better
see,
if it's higher.
right. Yeah, I don't I think the value to Essence will be
Mm,
in the operability of the platform.
mm,
Okay. So you launch Essence right now. Okay, one, then
mm.
market's down. Okay.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily mean that the value of Essence wouldn't go up. I mean, there's a lot of new coins that come out, and if there's a decent project, then
Mm,
they gain value anyway. And
yeah.
that's where I until V1 came out, until V1 comes out, I don't
Mm,
necessarily think the launch of Essence should be before that.
mm,
Okay.
yeah.
Because the value of Earth 2 is in the platform, not in the
Mm,
currency, not in the coin.
yeah, of course. Yeah,
Okay. The platform is going to will drive the value of the coin
of
of
course.
Essence. Okay.
Mm,
Um, and so right now, until well, they're still developing.
mm,
But yeah, that's my opinion.
mm. There's a
So
lot of factors to consider. So
sure.
if they allowed for trading of Essence just inside of the platform, which is something that Shane's spoken about before,
Right.
I can guarantee you it'll be very similar to how jewels are.
Yes.
When you craft the jewel, its value is around the same as using Essence for EPLs. It'll
Right.
be anywhere between 1 to 10 cents
Right.
because there's no outside influence. And the
Right.
thing that you'll find is that a lot of people follow these influencers when it comes to cryptocurrencies, and they will go right before the bull run, they'll say altcoins are where you need to invest because they
Right.
will be
They'll
exponential
sure.
100x.
Yes.
So is Essence one of these tokens that, if it launched on the platform, would influencers go then and say, hey, go and create an account on Earth 2 and go and buy some Essence? No, they're not because they operate on the exchanges.
No, I understand that. I understand that. Okay. And I'm not
Mm.
talking about but the platform will be a driving force for investors. Okay.
Yeah, of course.
If the platform is not viable,
Mm.
okay, then no, I'm lost. I'm trying to think of how I want to say this. I'm not saying it right.
Yeah, I mean, people will buy on speculation as well.
Sure.
That always happens. So
Right.
you have to factor in that. You also have to factor in. Shane did a candid video a little while back, and he said that he had at least anywhere between 100 to 1,000 companies who wanted to advertise on Earth 2,
Sure.
based on when you consider the amount of clicks they get, the amount of visits they get per month.
Sure.
Obviously, that's appealing, right?
Yes.
So for them to even know that there's going to be some way to invest and get a return on it, just companies alone that are
Yes.
into cryptocurrencies, that itself is another, thing that people will be looking at as well.
Yes.
So, there's lots of different factors involved there. And
No.
we can speculate all day long.
Right.
I'm not going to say, oh, I expect the price to be this.
No. No.
I'm going to say personally, if it's at this price point, I will buy it. If it's at this price point, I will use it for upgrading.
Right.
I'm not really looking to sell.
No, me neither. And the thing of it is
Mm,
what's the driving factor of most meme coins is whatnot is what platform is it attached to, what utility
mm,
does it have, and
mm,
uh, attract or how much response there is to the platform that it's attached to. So, or the
sure.
okay, and that's why I say
Mm,
that I personally think it would be better that V1 was online and we were attracting outside influences. I'm not talking about
mm,
necessarily getting more people to buy into V1 to buy property and
mm,
everything else, but to start visiting our mega cities. You talked about the
mm.
advertisers. Okay, when that
Yeah.
viability, when that's there, then the
Mm,
coin essence actually will could be used as a currency within for outside influences buying products and
mm.
services and everything else within
Oh yeah.
E2V1.
Mm,
Okay. So,
mm.
but like you said, we can speculate all day long and I may be right, I may be wrong, I may be ramblings of a
Yeah.
madman, you know?
Look, and even on Discord and Facebook, you could, yeah, you're right. You could go all day long. You could start talking about all of these different factors that come into play. And yeah, look, I'm not going to say a specific point. I mean, the other thing is you could compare Sandbox. So before Sandbox had their alpha season, their first alpha season, I
Right,
think they launched their token at 0.004, for example.
right.
So if you were someone, and I think that was on a decentralized exchange, they were able to buy that
Uh-huh.
like a pre-sale. So imagine you bought Sand at 0.004. Come the bull market, you've got it sitting at what was it, $6 to $8
Yeah, something
all
like
time
that.
high.
Yeah, I don't remember. It
So
went up there pretty bad.
yeah, so timing is everything, and that's what Shane's talking about
Sure.
is maximizing the performance of it from the perspective that the greater the performance of the token, obviously that will attract more people and more developers, more. You know
Okay.
what I mean?
Okay.
And more
Yeah.
attention, which is essentially at that point in
Right.
development, that's probably what they're going to want.
Right.
So
Okay. Okay.
that's the other thing that I think he's been really smart with has been the legal side of things. Now, I don't know if he's driven that or there's someone else, which everyone knows if they've done their research with Earth 2, is that Earth 2 as a company is in split ownership 50-50.
Okay.
So the other person that owns the other 50% of the company is a large developer called Tony Murphy. I don't know if you know that one.
I do not.
So, Chris, who is one of the moderators in Discord, he's very, very good at finding out these little bits of information. So,
Okay.
Tony Murphy has his own website, for example,
Okay.
and he's a property investor and philanthropist.
Okay.
So he's a really big investor when it comes to sky rises and land and things like that.
Okay.
So when Shane talks about, and he spoke about in one of his candid videos, was that if the token, when it launched, needed liquidity, he said that they would back that by $100 million at least if it needed it. So when we talk about liquidity, so you put it on the
Right.
exchange with that liquidity.
Hmm.
Are you following?
Yes. Oh no, I'm following you.
And the reason would be is because the company is 50-50 owned with Tony Murphy, who would obviously have that sort of capital, right?
Right. Correct.
So when we talk about, you know, the smart moves that Earth 2 has made, when it comes to the legal side of things, making sure that these things are trademarked, registered, copyrighted, all the rest of it. And I think that may come from this side of things.
I have a feeling
And
if you're talking about a large developer and investor like that, yeah, they
yeah,
they're pretty hot on the legal side. So
yes, but this is the key for Earth 2's success is being smart when it comes to the legal side of things, because any Tom, Dick, and Harry who is scaly enough can come along and they can just take whatever it is you're developing for their own and go, you know what? Oh, we've done this, rah, 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 and just have a better plan with it. You know what I mean?
yeah, yes,
So
I do. I was
I
just
feel
thinking.
like you're a bit blown away there.
No, I was just thinking. I was just thinking about you were talking about anybody coming up with a project or something like this. And I was thinking about Kickstarter, and
Mm,
I was doing some research into Kickstarter and how
mm,
there have been people that have come up with projects in Kickstarter and have walked
mm,
away with millions of dollars from people
mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm.
never developed anything.
Yeah,
And
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 I've
yeah,
heard
but
stories
anyway.
about it was didn't isn't that what happened with Bill Gates when he first started out? He
Oh,
kind of took people's ideas and made it his own and things like that.
yeah, well, his part, yes, he did. Okay.
Mm,
And actually, I believe his wife was a lot of driving for. I think his wife at the time. But yes, he had
mm,
put together. There was, I know at least one, but I thought there was like three of them that were had been working
mm,
on that idea. And so,
mm. Yeah.
I know where the wife came in. I was thinking of the story of the Bill Gates and uh, IBM and them taking developing Windows, and
Yeah.
the wife
Yeah.
of the other developer would not let the IBM executives into the house to talk and
Oh.
to the husband, and
Mm,
therefore they went back to Gates, and that's
okay.
how that's anyway.
Mm. Another
That's
story for
it.
another time.
Yeah, another story for another time. Anyway, so it was just something.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. So yeah, interesting things to really think about. In and a lot of it is very underrated and underestimated. And I think a lot of
mhm,
people just scream at the top of the hills because they're so impatient.
right,
Um,
but it's a big project,
oh
and
yeah.
there's a lot going on, and it takes time to
Mm,
put it together,
mm.
and uh, and I understand, people's impatience. I was there. I've been there
Yeah, yeah,
many a time. So
yeah.
um,
The other thing we wanted to talk about as well, and we touched on this last week. Have you seen the videos from Congress with
oh
Gary
yeah,
Gensler?
yes,
I,
I
I
have.
I saw it. I saw it, but I thought it was new, but it was from April.
Mhm. So
And how they grilled him was, yeah, that was quite interesting.
yeah, well, he needs to be gone.
Mm. So anyway, they filed to have him
Yes,
fired. They filed to have him fired and restructure the SEC, which
yes.
is the main sort of pain in the backside. Not it's not that they've done that; it's the response from the exchanges. So, uh, which one was it? There was one or two of them that delisted Matic, for example, and a
Mhm.
couple of other cryptocurrencies. So for them to delist something is obviously going to have a massive impact, right? Just from a price point of view, and it was quite interesting because one of the congressmen, in his argument that Gary Gensler was not doing his job, he was not protecting investors, and he let all of this stuff happen with FTX and Terra Luna and all the rest of it. And it was quite funny because he mentioned the CCP in that
I know.
respect because they're talking about money going from America
to
to
China,
China
right?
or elsewhere. Yeah.
So it's the same old story, and we've talked about it before and whatnot. The United States is so far behind in developing the regulations required for exchanges and stuff. Um,
Mm,
that that we're falling. The U.S. is falling behind on it, and
mm,
Gensler is one of the reasons, but he's
mm,
not the only reason. Okay,
mm,
you know, it's Congress, also sitting on the sidelines. Now there are some congressmen and whatnot that are in understand, but it's getting everybody else to move in the same right.
mm,
But yes, so instead of trying to develop a healthy environment for cryptocurrency within the United States, they just keep on
mm,
sitting on their hands. And we get things such as FTX happening,
mm,
and other stuff, because there's nobody looking over their shoulders to make sure that they have the assets that they say that they have.
mm,
It's not so much the cryptocurrency itself does not need to be regulated. It doesn't
mm,
need to be given another title. It doesn't need to, you don't need to take and say, okay, well, it's a security, and so therefore you have to have all these different licenses and so on and so. No, cryptocurrency is, as it is. It needs to stay that way, but regulations need to be put on these exchanges to
mm,
ensure that they are not, bamboozling people, you know,
mm,
gaining, collect, and not having the assets to back up what they're doing. I
mm,
mean, because look at, we can't access crypto directly, basically. Well, you can. Okay, I'm not completely sure on accessing various platforms and stuff like this. Okay, and how the contracts actually work or not. For
mm.
example, buying
Sure.
Matic, okay, and being able to take and getting Matic without going through like Coinbase or
Mm,
or one of the exchanges and stuff like that.
mm,
So there, my knowledge is lacking in some areas in that regards. So, but
mm,
I do know that um, inhibiting uh, using crypto is not a healthy thing for the United States, and that's what's just been
no,
happening.
that's right. Yeah. And
And so,
yeah, you can kind of see it in even from both sides. This and not specifically the exchanges, but more specifically, you know, the SEC and then the Congress. They are very, blunt in how they talk as well. So, is it healthy for, you know, someone who's a part of this commission to say that we don't need crypto? We have digital currency. It's called fiat. Blah blah
no,
blah. Like
that's
talking absolute nonsense, right?
that's correct. That
And
is,
then on the other side, you have these. You know, it's ridiculous.
yes,
And then this, you know, and I couldn't believe it. This, the way they talk to him, we want a yes or no question, and he starts going into this dialogue, and then they just go, no, claiming my time back. Next question, because
yeah,
he's not, he's kind of dodging them in a politically correct way or something. Uh,
yeah. No, I know. It's yeah. It's a clown
it's
show. I'm
it's
sorry.
pure entertainment. Yeah, it is
It's
a
a
clown show. That's right.
it's
It's
a
entertaining. That's all it is. You know.
no. It's frustrating, is what it is. But
Yeah. Yeah.
from
Well.
from you folks' side of the ocean and whatnot, it probably is entertaining. I mean, you guys
Yeah.
probably get a hilarious laugh out of these people. I mean, it's just like
Uh.
ridiculous. Um, but on going on to, just talking about Gensler and the CB and the digital currency that they're wanted to
Mm,
push as well, is
mm,
that's that is not creating a cryptocurrency. That is just changing the dollars to a electronic format that they can
Mm,
control
mm,
without impunity. So,
mm. Yeah, watch this space, I suppose.
right. So,
Mm. Anyway, he'll keep an eye on that, and I'm especially keeping an eye on it just for the sake of, in respect to what Earth 2 decides to do, because did they
well,
make the right call to hold back for these couple of reasons? Because of the volatility and also because of utility.
right.
Yeah, I think it's warranted.
No, we have to keep an
Yeah.
eye on it because it does it does affect the projects we're involved in. It affects
Mm.
well, it affects everybody's economy as well. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's important to keep an eye on them and not bury
Mm.
your hand in the sand and so anyway. Well,
Yeah. On that note as well, the Knights of Malta NFTs are reasonably cheap if you buy them with Matic right now. I think you could probably
yes.
pick one up for maybe like 12 USD or something like that.
Yeah, they are. They're yes.
But I'm patiently sitting on my hands waiting for that price to go up so then we can put that back into the tiles.
It will.
So yeah,
It will, but
yeah, I
it,
have no doubt. Yeah, I'll be onto it. No worries. Um, yeah. So that about concludes everything for today.
yes.
Aside from you falling in the lava pit at least 100 times on the smash cards.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I know. Lava pit. Yeah, unfortunately, lava pit is one of my worst tracks. So
Yeah, yeah. It was
so
good fun though, really good.
it was hilarious. It was great fun. So it
Yeah,
but yeah, I
yeah.
look forward to next week. So
Oh
well,
yeah, oh
so
yeah.
I think that wraps it up for this week. I thank everybody
Sure
for
does.
checking us out, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Resin?
Thanks for listening.
All right.
Adios.